Okay, we're gonna ask a sample question to make sure the audio is working.
Okay.
What do you think are better, dinosaurs or frogs?
Ooh, dinosaurs.
Remember to hit that like and subscribe, and don't forget the notification.
Yeah,
Dinosaurs. Good choice. All right.
I do. I was a big fan as a kid,
Okay.
especially the Muppet versions.
Do you think dinosaurs would ever lose?
Are they up against bears?
No, dinosaurs versus frogs. Do you think dinosaurs would ever lose?
No, of course not.
Of course
Against
not.
frogs? No.
We had a big Olympic event in my community where we played 3 different games. There's an emote with dinosaurs and then an emote with dogs, and the dinosaurs crushed I meant frogs, not dogs. The dinosaurs crushed the frogs.
Like, yeah, well, I mean, naturally, they're immense, right? And they do all kinds of things. Like, if we're talking about dinosaurs, I mean, some of them can fly, some of them can swim, a lot of sharp teeth going on, some of them are super fast. Like,
Yeah, and frogs are just
kind of all the same thing, right? I mean, probably 50 different kinds of frog, but at the end of the day, it's a frog.
true.
Yeah. No, I'm team dinosaur on that one.
Okay. I am joined by, hopefully, the future mayor of Omaha, Mark Gudgel. Not Grudgel, not Gudgel. Mark Gudgel. First question, have you thought about changing your name for branding purposes?
Oh.
To maybe Smith or Nash or Johnson?
Come on.
So I have Mark Gudgel here. We posted an Ask Me Anything on the Omaha subreddit, and we're going to be asking him some of those questions. This is live, off the cuff. I have not reviewed these questions, so who knows what type of crazy stuff we're going to get into here. Mark Gudgel is currently running for mayor of Omaha. We're trying to make our way through the primary process right now, where he is contending with other Democratic runners like Neary, Snipes, and Harris at the moment. Ultimately, duking it out to see who's going to go against Gene Stothert in the general election. Here is the first question that I have. It's a two-parter, which I don't know if that's allowed, but two-parter. Number 1, why you over any other Democratic candidate?
I've said repeatedly that it boils down to vision. I feel like I've laid out a very clear, compelling vision for the future of the city, and we've laid out really clear policy. And I think there's a big difference between good ideas and policy. And I hear a lot of good ideas coming from other candidates, but I don't hear them talking about how they'll pay for it and how they'll implement it. And, when we say we're going to do something, for example, make college tuition free for every kid who graduates high school in Omaha, it's not just a good idea, it's a policy. We figured out how we're going to pay for it, who we have to bring to the table. And they're promises. And if I don't get them done, run me out of office. So I'm not hearing the same things I'm saying coming from other candidates, and that's ultimately the answer to the question, why me?
Okay. I think you guys are the only one, if I could be wrong, I think you're the only one so far that has like a detailed list of all your policies on your website as well, right?
Certainly, yeah. And then the other thing I'd say about that is that, we've got, I think, 8 policies on the webpage right now. We'll have 8 more before the primary. Like, we're still writing them. Our affordable housing policy is not written yet. I spent 3 hours of my life in meetings about that today, trying to make sure that it's right and doable and accurate. And, that's ultimately, a lot of time, but it's worth doing.
The second part of this question is, will you be releasing policies like you have on other topics on how you plan to fix the streets sustainably and your view on the light rail project?
What time is it? Almost 9 o'clock. Light rail's a different thing, but it's thinking about the streets. Tomorrow morning I'm recording that policy, actually, or I'm recording the podcast that'll go along with the newsletter that comes out with that policy. So look for it in about 6 days, next Friday. And I'm really proud of it already, what we've put together and what we're going to talk about, in the podcast. And, the thing that drives me crazy, right? It's a hole in the ground. We have the technology. The problem, this is not race relations. This is not climate change. This is not something with like an X factor that we can't anticipate. It's a hole in the ground. It's a lack of political will. It's a lack of financing. It's a lack of leadership. And the policy will be out soon. We will fix the streets. It's ridiculous that we haven't yet.
All right. Going on to question 2. Okay, well, this guy's written an autobiography. I'm reading it all, okay? You were my sophomore English teacher early in your career. A memory from your class that always sticks out to me was the time someone asked you, how you know what political party you belong to, and another student responded to ask your parents. You very nicely explained that no, asking your parents was not the thing to do. You needed to analyze how you actually felt about issues and decide for yourself. It made me really want to think about how I felt about politics and where I actually landed on the political spectrum. I wish I lived in Omaha so I could vote for you, but I will certainly be spreading the word to anyone I know that lives there. That wasn't a question. Sorry, that was just...
Well, if I still want to respond to it, if I
Go
can,
for it.
Whoever you are, reach out to me because I remember that day. I remember that class, but you could be one of about 28 people, right? Please reach out to me through the webpage. But I'm deeply moved as your teacher to hear that you remember that, and fortunately, it was pretty good advice. So
Awesome. All right.
thank you.
This one comes from next question. I'm not going to read their names. What are your thoughts on banning assault weapons? As a pro-gun Democrat, I think that there's a lot we can do in the way of sensible gun control, but the focus Democrats have on assault weapons seems overblown in my opinion.
I should preface this by saying I'm running to be the chief executive of a municipality, right? So tackling amendments to the Constitution is a little outside my purview in this job. However, I'm not at all opposed to telling you how I feel personally. I'm from a part of the state where we, hunt for an awful lot of food. I have no problem with deer rifles. I have no problem with people carrying sidearms and things of that nature. Weapons of mass destruction and things that, bump stocks, things of that nature concern me greatly. Again, I don't know how much say I'll have in it as mayor. Actually, I do know. I won't have much of any say in it as mayor. But, if you were asking how I feel, running for Senate or something like that, I draw the line at things like bump stocks and automatic weapons. So.
Gotcha. Coming in on the next thing, for those types of bans, that's all federal, right? For like banning bump stocks and stuff? Yeah, okay.
Some can be done on the state level in terms of like conceal and carry laws and things like that. But,
Gotcha.
yeah.
This one, okay, this is a four-parter, but number one, what is your plan of attack for seriously needed infrastructure improvements? What are your top priorities? We didn't talk about this. I'm gonna press on this question a little bit more.
Okay.
So as somebody that's lived in Omaha for a long time, I've heard people talk about infrastructure for a long time. I've also driven by, back when I used to live here, more full-time, like driving by the same construction site every year over and over and over again. So what do you plan to do differently? Because it feels like mayors have talked about this in the past in terms of doing it. Like, what do you think is like impeding them from getting it done? And then why are you going to be different there?
Well, yeah, part of it, I think, is just a lack of realism. If you're the chief executive of a municipality, right, we're not the federal government. We can't borrow immense amounts of money against, the city's debt. I mean, you look at the national debt, the national deficit, and it's in trillions of dollars, double-digit trillions, and it's like, it'll never get paid off, but we're going to get away with it as a country? Probably. A city just can't do that. Cities declare bankruptcy when they're mismanaged, and this one's far too close to that. I look at our roads, and a couple of things jump out at me right away thinking about, and there are other things that constitute infrastructure, of course, but, thinking about sewers and roads and pavement and things of that nature. Number one, stop widening the stupid things. We are constantly widening roads. And if you take a 2-lane road and you turn it into a 4-lane road so that you can cram more cars onto it, you've doubled the cost of maintaining that thing. And we've already realized we can't pave the ones we've got. We can't maintain the roads we've got. And the other thing we have to stop doing as a municipality is constantly annexing the land around us. Developers go out and they build these little McMansion settlements, knowing that the city's going to absorb that and it's suddenly going to be a part of Omaha. No, it's not. Let it float. I don't want to pave the roads. I don't want to take care of the sewers. Let whoever built the thing maintain it. That's not going to be our problem when I'm mayor. I understand like the city of New York would love to be able to annex the land around it, right? That's not where we're at in 2021 as a municipality. And until we can pave the roads that our citizens own and drive on, we're not going to bring any more into the city.
I don't know if it applies to all places, but there was a video that went over some studies. There's a name for this. I wish I could remember the phenomenon, but when you ride when you wide roads to alleviate traffic, it never works because more traffic just floods to the particular roads. There's a name for this. I wish I could remember it, but like it never, ever, ever actually helps the traffic
I
issues.
love a term for that phenomenon, but we know that it's real. Like you can make the road as big as you want. People will just drive on it. People will just fill it with cars.
Gotcha. The name was induced demand was the concept.
Yeah.
That as you widen roads, people just flood them and it doesn't help at all. Yeah. You know, it would help though.
Public
Buses.
transportation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, part 2 of this. How do you feel about how Governor Ricketts has handled the whole COVID situation and subsequently vaccine distribution? On the former, specifically how schools were handled for the COVID situation.
Yeah, Governor Ricketts is a dangerous idiot. And it is terribly unfortunate that he has a position of power, that he was able to buy a position of power in our state. Yeah, I will be an enemy of his as the mayor of Omaha. And as the mayor of Omaha, I'm the mayor of 26% of Nebraska. That's a pretty formidable enemy. He's handled COVID-19 in the way that he's handled his antiquated views of homosexuality. He's tried to pray it away. And I'm, I don't hear any disdain for religion in that statement, but that's not a good approach when science is available. He turned away a FEMA vaccination site because I don't want to try to speak to his motive. He's a disaster. He is a leadership vacuum, and he has a lot of blood on his hands. And one day we're going to hold him accountable to that.
All right, number 3. Oh, do you have anything to say specifically on how schools were handled as part of that question?
Yeah. I mean, working in a school, I think one of the things that agitated me a great deal was that, teachers have not been, it's tough. As a teacher, right, I have a vested interest in this. So on the one hand, I'm like, well, teachers should be prioritized. And on the other, I'm like, as a teacher, that's a kind of a difficult statement to make.
Mm-hmm.
But looking at the jobs we do on a day-to-day basis, yeah, teachers should have been prioritized, whether I am one or not. And could have been, and were in other states.
Mm-hmm.
But in this state, and I think, a quick look at the situation, a quick even just scan of Twitter would indicate that Governor Ricketts' priorities for this vaccine are something's going on there. Something deeply concerning and illogical is taking place here.
Gotcha. Third part of this. As a resident, I've been very disappointed with our new garbage and recycling contractors. They're always a day or days late,
Me too.
if they even come at all. I understand weather, et cetera, et cetera. If this poor execution continues, how will you approach the issue?
That one, like many things, is sort of complicated in that I believe our contract with this company is 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Is it citywide, like one company, or do you contract multiple? Or do you,
right now it's citywide, one company. It was Deffenbaugh up until the transition a few months ago, and now it's, I forget, although I'm sure somebody will chime in. I'm interested in what it would cost to break that contract.
Mm-hmm.
Not because it is necessarily something we should do, but because I want to know what the expense would be. Because the current company costs more money and provides worse service than we had. So even just returning to what we previously had would cost us less money and improve the situation. So that's a conversation that's worth having. But ultimately, it just kind of boils down to, I don't want to say human decency, that sounds dramatic, but like trash collection is not terribly complicated. This is something we can accomplish. And it's something many municipalities do and do well. It's something we've successfully done in the past. And I think we can get it done. And it's not something I'm going to overlook, but it's something that we're going to seek to get done quickly while I'm in office.
Gotcha. The fourth part of this is, what are some specific reasons that people should choose to vote for you over Gene?
I want to treat that like a very serious question because I think that it was asked in earnest.
Yeah, let's say actually you have like, and actually I don't have to just say this. We've ran into people door knocking. You've got people out here that voted for Biden, but still voted for Stothert. They still feel like they're Republicans. Maybe they were turned off by Trump. So you've got some voters that are kind of floating in the middle. They're Republican in terms of how they vote. If somebody is like on the wall, on the fence, right? Like, what do you say to move them over? Like, this is something that Gene has done bad. I think you should vote for me instead. I can do this better.
Sure. To me, I I want to be delicate. I wasn't looking for an office to run for. I am very happy teaching English and raising my beautiful children and spending every night having a glass of wine and playing a board game, like Settlers of Catan with my beautiful wife.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing this out of a sense of obligation because of how badly run this city is. And I do think that many of us are so insulated that we don't even really feel it, and that's good for you. If you don't feel the struggles of the city, if you're not personally struggling, I'm not mad at you for it. But we've lost 2 Fortune 500 companies in the last 5 years. That's 1 in every 3 Fortune 500s that we have. At that rate, my son Titus, who's 5, won't be able to intern at one in high school.
Mm-hmm.
We have no plan to combat climate change. In fact, we are probably the most destructive city in the American Midwest when it comes to the climate. We not only make no efforts, but we're actually counterproductive. Things that we could have done, like banning plastic bags, which the city council approved a couple years ago.
And Stothard voted down.
This mayor vetoed, exactly. And so we live in a city that is led by people who have no vision for the future. And that can work in the present, right? As I've said before, I've got mine. I'm not running for the pay raise. I'm not running for prestige. I'm not running because I just want to work myself to death. But at the end of the day, I'm concerned about the future. And the city is currently led by people who clearly are not.
Okay. Was there anything more? Because I see this guy in chat. Was there anything more that you wanted to more pointedly say about a difference between you and Gene? Maybe like one or an example or whatever? Because he was going for specifics. I saw him in chat.
Sure. I think that I'm deeply concerned about climate change, and she clearly is not. Our city has handled COVID-19 very, very poorly and in almost the opposite way that I would have done things. I am a strong advocate for public schools and for our school systems and education. Our current mayor is not. In fact, despite the fact that she was on a school board one time, she's clearly aligned with the Ricketts political machine. I'm a strong proponent for public transportation, and she has been extremely dismissive, not only of public transportation, but walkability and bikeability, which I think are very important. And I think we could go on. I actually think that in almost every issue, here's one that's deeply important to me. I'm passionate about equity and LGBTQ plus issues and race relations. And our mayor has regularly gone on record saying racist things, voting against the interests of the LGBTQ community, and ultimately serving only one portion of our population. And I will grant her, it is the largest portion of our population, but it is not the only segment, and it is not the only important segment. And when I launched this campaign, we did it under the slogan, serving all of Omaha. And what I need people to understand is that if you're hearing me say that and you live in Omaha, that includes you. Full stop, regardless of who you may be. That is not the case with the current administration.
Okay, cool. All right. I saw the guy in chat. He said he was satisfied with your answer. So nice job. He also includes at the end, thanks so much for doing this, Mark. And also Destiny for being proactive about helping Omaha. Nice.
Thank you.
Do either of you guys have a tripod?
No.
Way to go, losers. Okay. Well, listen. Omaha also has frequent earthquakes, so that's why it's shaking a little bit. Okay. All right. Oh, I've listened to you talk about this one. Uh-oh. So this guy says, what about citywide Wi-Fi like Council Bluffs has?
It is a fantastic idea. I haven't rolled out the policy because, like I said, there's a difference where I come from between good ideas and policies. And figuring out how to pay for that is complicated. I do think, if you want to talk about wedge issues with the mayor, the current administration, we missed a huge opportunity because I think the pandemic was a great time to say, look, we just need this, so let's just pay for it. But everybody I talk to says we're talking about billions of dollars.
Billions.
And,
yikes. Okay.
I would still, we will look into it. This is important. Wi-Fi is basically a human right in 2021, as far as I'm concerned, like education, also like healthcare. And so we should pursue this, absolutely, but I do not have a plan for how we can get it done. And if anybody tells you they do, I would dig into it because it's complicated and it's expensive.
Gotcha. In your opinion, what are Omaha's greatest strengths as a city and greatest weaknesses?
The greatest strength of this city by far, in my opinion, is the people. I love the people that live in Omaha. These are good people. They're hardworking. They're intelligent. They care about each other, you know. They shovel each other's driveways. They dig each other's cars out of the snow. They give each other rides. And I think that the people of Omaha are extraordinary people, and they are the strength. We are the strength of this city, and we could be so much more than we are. I think that one of the big weaknesses may be in a lack of hope, maybe in a lack of belief that we can be better or that we deserve better. I think there's a lot of complacency. I think a lot of people are willing to look at the current state of our city and the situation as it is: horrible public transportation, a war being waged on public schools, no thought for climate change, horrific brain drain, Fortune 5s leaving, small businesses closing down. And they think to themselves, well, maybe that's just how it is. And it doesn't have to be that way. So I think our strength is that these are great people. I think our weakness is that maybe we haven't been compelled to fight. I think it's time to fight. We could be so much more. This city could be so much better. And one of the reasons I'm running for mayor is because I am a fighter. And I'm willing to pick this fight on behalf of this city and the people who live here and the people who are going to live here in the future.
What is your favorite place to eat in Omaha?
I have an extremely sentimental connection to a restaurant in the passageway in the old market called WMDs because my wife and I had our first date there. We just celebrated our 8-year anniversary there the other night. I live within walking distance, if I'm willing to take a little hike, of Dinkers, and that is an awesome cheeseburger. Love that. Block 16 is a favorite of mine. If I'm getting breakfast, if I'm looking donuts, croissants, things like that, Culprit Cafe is an all-time favorite. They're just, honestly, like the question about Omaha's restaurants, I could geek out about Omaha's restaurants. There are so many extraordinarily, little spots. And, I used to pick up my son and daughter at daycare, swing by Smoke and Jay's Barbecue, and I'd get a beer and they'd get a juice, and we'd get some, some burnt ends and take some home to mom. And, there's just so many phenomenal restaurants in this city.
Okay. New rule for these: don't name any restaurants unless they're willing to hang your signs, all right?
Well, hopefully all of those will.
Yeah. All right. No, okay. We went to the Drover today. How was that?
Loved it.
Okay.
Loved it.
Good job.
Yeah,
All right.
I had a prime rib and it was extraordinary.
Okay. Next question. Say hypothetically as mayor, you have the perfect term and achieve everything you set out to achieve. What's next? Do you have any higher political aspirations, or do you have any particularly far out goals for the city of Omaha that you'd saved for once everything else is done? So I know we've talked about how you don't want to go farther politically, or I think is what you've said in the past. So more on the second part of this question. So let's say that you get all of your base, like we took care of the baseline stuff.
Yeah.
What's like some far out in the Jetsons? Like what
Sure.
could Omaha be? I guess. Or what are your far out aspirations for the city?
Yeah, 3.5 years in, if everything has gone to plan and the city is as it should be. One thing that I just love to think about, the Sacramento Kings were once the Kansas City Omaha Kings. And it's funny because people are like, well, we should have an NFL football team, I don't think we can support football. NFL stadiums hold 70,000 people. NBA stadiums hold 20,000 people. And Creighton, which is a pretty good basketball team, but, they threaten to get into the Sweet 16. It's not like they're national champions every year. Sells that place out. I'm pretty sure the Kings could sell that place out. So I would love to have that conversation, I think it's a fun thing to think about. The Wi-Fi, which is not a current policy, free Wi-Fi across the city, I think is a great thing to think about. I want to build electric cars here, and then I want to make sure everybody can have one. Maybe not as a gift, but certainly we can forfeit the municipal taxes on these things. We're talking about carbon neutrality by 2045. Well, if everything's going to plan, let's make it 2035. There's a lot that I'd like to do. And if I may, just to the first part of the question about other political ambitions, I really don't harbor any, but I will say that I'm running for office because I view myself as a servant. And because I currently serve 200 people at a time, my students, and I'd like to serve 500,000. If a legitimate opportunity arose to serve more people than that, and I thought I could do it, it's not off the table.
I'm just curious, would you, if you won as mayor and you felt like your first 3 or 4 years went well, would you continue to run for re-election, or?
I believe so. At some point, I think I'd have to look at the situation and say, well, did we do everything we can do? And who else is positioned to win? So if I win, in the scenario in which I win, none of the people running against me won, right? Some of the people running against me right now may be great candidates for mayor 4 or 8 or 12 years from now, and it might be a really great thing to circle back to some of them and say, apparently in 2021 it was not time for you, but maybe now is.
Gotcha.
And I would love to help you take this position.
What this guy is a bonus question. What's your favorite band / genre of music / song?
Man, if I could only listen to the music of one artist for the rest of my life, it would be Billy Joel. Having said that, I think if I had to choose a genre, I'm more inclined to look at Seattle grunge or some things of that nature. Eric Hutchinson comes immediately to mind, actually. But yeah, Billy Joel is the answer, I think.
All right. What's your favorite song? Is that a Billy Joel song?
I'm gonna go out on a limb here. There are a lot. Oh yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of songs that I absolutely love, and a lot by Billy Joel. Vienna's important. Piano Man, you can't overlook. But I think Summer Highland Falls actually may be my favorite song by Billy Joel.
Okay. Thank you for taking the time to do this. What is your position on land zoning reforms to legalize multi-family housing in more places, like Senator Justin Wayne's Municipal Density and Missing Middle Housing Act?
Justin Wayne is a hero of mine. He was a part of a group of people that I reached out to early on and said, I reached out to his camp. I don't know Senator Wayne personally, although again, I admire him. I reached out to his camp and said, is there any chance he's running for mayor? Because if he is, I just want to back him. And I was assured he was not. And clearly he's not. He's doing incredible things in the unicameral right now. As zoning relates to housing, I think that the city has to be more involved. I understand why we pass legislation that says, hey, you can't take this mansion and turn it into 9 residences. On the other hand, I understand why we're inclined to do that, because we needed 9 residences, not 1 mansion. And so I think that the city needs to be doing a lot more to provide livable, affordable, high quality housing for people. And I think that when my housing plan is released here in the coming weeks, people are going to see something extremely comprehensive that will benefit all of us, or at least the vast majority of us, and in particular the people who are in need of low and middle income housing.
Gotcha. Do you have, this isn't in the question, I'm curious, do you have a strong opinion on what should happen with the real estate and crossroads? Do you think that should go to businesses, condos, affordable housing? Do you have any?
I think that what they're doing at Crossroads is fine. I just don't want to float them alone for it.
Gotcha.
The TIF, the tax increment financing at the tune of $80 million, has me really riled up. That is defunding public education, and it really aggravates me and shouldn't be done, especially on what I regard as prime real estate at 72nd and Dodge. And I think capitalism would back me up on that, right? If that needed to be done, if we needed something established there, then it would be built, and we wouldn't have to bribe people to do it. So I have a problem with the TIF being applied to Crossroads. I have no problem with people developing there.
Gotcha. What district is that, Crossroads?
66.
District
School district.
66?
District 66.
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay. Next, easy question. Do you play video games?
I play Words with Friends on my phone.
Okay. Close enough. All right. Next question.
I used to. This may be of interest. I don't know. I used to. I was addicted to a game called Doom at one point. And after I beat that, I was completely, I was in a league for Madden in college where you had to play one 60-minute game per day to stay in this league. And it's probably why my grades were garbage my freshman year. But I had a really good time doing it.
All right. What's the biggest thing you want to accomplish as mayor? So say you have political capital for one issue and then it tanks the rest of your, nobody wants to work with you. What's the one issue?
Yeah, that's Obamacare, right? That's the if you've got the supermajority in the Senate, or as I hope, because I hope Naomi Hathaway wins city council, I hope that Sarah Cohen wins city council, and I hope that I win the mayorship, and that we have a really genuinely progressive group of people that want to get stuff done in Omaha. If I get to play the role of President Obama and have a supermajority where we can get stuff done, number one is what we've called the Omaha Promise, and making sure that every last kid who graduates high school in this city can go to college and not pay a dime for tuition. That will do more to level the playing field. That will do more for equity. That will do more for improving the lives of our residents. It will do more for our tax base. There are a million reasons to do it, and there isn't a single reason not to. But the pushback is going to be strong from the people who go, well, I paid for my college or whatever, and I just that needs to be done for our children.
This is an interesting one. On which policy issues have you changed your mind in the last 3 to 5 years? Is there any big, so maybe not like a specific policy maybe, but even more like a general, I used to be for this thing and now I've changed or whatever. Yeah.
That's a great question. There are several that come to mind. I used to be really anti-marijuana. And I think that was, and this was probably 10, 12 years ago. I would have been really opposed to people smoking weed. Because, as you know, weed will turn you into a meth head, assuming you went through DARE, right? Which I did.
Yep.
And so I've been educated on that subject and changed my position pretty substantially. I'm actually very pro marijuana, both medical and recreational. I have no problem with people using it. And as a mayor, I want to tax it. I think another one is guns. I think that at one point in my life, I was probably anti-gun is still pretty strong, but I think I was really just well, if we just got rid of them, then nobody'd get shot. And I think I've been educated on that topic, and I think that ultimately it's, I do think that there are weapons that should not be in the hands of civilians, but ultimately, I'm much more pro 2A than most Democrats, I think. I could probably think of others, but they asked for one, that's two.
Gotcha.
So.
All right. Dozens of countries have plans to phase out internal combustion engines in favor of electric motors over the next few decades. What is the plan for municipal vehicle fleets to be augmented with electrical vehicles and the necessary charging infrastructure?
What a beautiful question. So we're going to start with our bus fleet. I want to improve public transportation dramatically. We currently have a fleet of 150 diesel buses. And I want, to offer the bus routes that I want to offer and get people where they need to be as quickly as I want to. We're looking at probably 200, 250 buses, maybe even 300. I want to, as we phase those out and as we add new ones, I want them to be electric. And there are some additional complications with electric buses when you look at a hilly city in a place where it can be 30 degrees below zero.
Is Omaha considered? Are we considered a hilly city? I guess it is in some areas for sure. Yeah. Okay.
Ohio, especially.
Yeah.
Right,
true.
and,
Okay.
and you know, I don't think we begin in the hilly parts of the city with the electric buses, right? And hopefully technology plays a part in catching up. And I think that, well, you can kind of always count on technology to catch up, right? I would also like, you know, one of the things I'm going to do is appoint a cabinet level position whose job is just sustainability, looking at the projects that we undertake as a city and saying, okay, but how does this reach carbon neutrality in 2045? So if the police come to me and say, I need 20 new cruisers, this is going to be the person that goes, yeah, but they'll need to be electric in order to keep us on track. And so I'm going to have that person in my ear all the time who's not a yes person. Their whole job is just keep it green, you know, and keep us moving in the right direction. And so, you know, ultimately, yeah, I'd love to see every vehicle in the city that's owned by the city be electric with, you know, probably some exceptions. I have to imagine that I can't really fathom an electric fire engine. If the technology gets to that point, cool, we'll do it. You know, but then I think the other thing is I want to make them more accessible to civilians. I really want to be building electric cars here and then charge, you know, if you build it here and you don't charge your municipal taxes on it and you don't charge your wheel taxes and things like that and you don't have to ship it anywhere, it should cost a lot less money to buy that car than almost any other car. And so I'd love to see doing things like that for our residents as well.
Gotcha. What's the deal with property taxes rising each year? I've heard that property taxes fund schools primarily. Oh, I think this is supposed to be fund. I've heard the property taxes fund schools primarily, where other states have a blended source. Is that true? And if so, would you be open to diversifying that?
You know, one thing I mentioned earlier is that Nebraska currently ranks 48th out of 50 with state aid to public schools. So right now there's an immense burden on the municipality to fund its own schools and not receive much aid from the state by comparison with some of our neighbors. I would love to see the sources of funding for public schools diversified. I will fight like hell to make sure that public schools are funded. Having said that, I don't think it needs to come exclusively from property tax at all. I really do want to dig into the options and you know, one of the things that I think we know about the pandemic is that I don't think anybody's in a position to pay more taxes right now. Very few of us anyway. And so I think we're going to have to come up with solutions that do not involve raising property taxes.
Gotcha. This is a really dark question. How do you think your experience in Holocaust education will help you govern as mayor? I'm gonna expand this one a little bit because you have a lot of international experience that people wouldn't expect as much. Do you think that so being in the Midwest, people's perspectives can sometimes be pretty narrow? Do you think that there's something that you've learned in the course of your travels or that you've gathered from other countries that in some way that experience might uniquely shape you to kind of be in a position here to lead?
Oh, absolutely. A couple of examples come to mind, and these are related to Holocaust education. These are part of my work in genocide education, so I hope they satisfy the question, but if not, I hope that person will weigh back in. On Thursday this week in my humanities class, I shared a photograph with students that I had taken 2 or 3 years ago in Sarajevo. And I took it in the Jewish cemetery in Sarajevo. And that day, actually, I had spent the day at Srebrenica, which was the site of a genocide in 1995. And we got back into town and went to the Jewish cemetery just because that's, you know, it was a fairly quick trip to Bosnia, and, you know. And as I'm standing in the second oldest Jewish cemetery in Europe, the call to prayer, the Muslim call to prayer, starts echoing across minarets throughout the valley. Sarajevo is a fishbowl, you know, and so it's this big valley, and it's just throughout. It was just gorgeous.
What country is this in again?
Bosnia.
Okay.
And as that stops, the church bells sound off. I think that the Muslim call to prayer probably started at like 5:57, 5:58 p.m. And the church bells were probably scheduled for 6. And here I am in the Jewish cemetery, hearing the Muslim and Christian call to prayer, and there's this beautiful symmetry of the Abrahamic faiths and really of humanity in a place where those things that separate us had led to genocide. And we live in Omaha, in the only city in the United States of America with one campus housing a mosque, a synagogue, and a church. And I think that that is something that we should be proud of. I think that's something that we should be more aware of. I think that's something we should celebrate, and that more people should be involved in, partaking in. Sonia, my wife Sonia, and I identify as Christians. Our third date was a Passover Seder at a dear friend of ours' house, who later attended our wedding. And of course, they're Jewish because they were having a Passover Seder. I think that Omaha is maybe even uniquely positioned to be a truly accepting and beautiful and diverse city. And I think that my worldview has been affected by my travels and my studies, and that I can bring that to leadership. A second thing that comes to mind is Rwanda and my work in Rwanda. And in Rwanda, we sometimes in the United States will pay a little bit of lip service to the concept of restorative justice. But the truth is, the United States of America is about punitive justice. We lock people up. If we don't like your behavior, we're going to lock you up. And we have found not so subtle ways of legislating behavior to incarcerate greater numbers of Black and brown people. There's no two ways about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at Rwanda's system of restorative justice. And in Rwanda, you've got, number one, prisons without walls. Number two, guards without guns. And number three, inmates who could leave. People who committed genocide, genocidaires, who could leave prison to attend a family wedding. They are not without a connection to the world. And because they have a connection to the world, they have a reason to get back into it. But Rwanda has also offered them a pathway to get back into it in their system of restorative justice. We need to stop locking people up and throwing away the key. We just hijacked in this city $10 million worth of COVID relief to build a prison for students, for young people, for my students. That infuriates me. That kind of backwards thinking causes problems. And as the leader of this municipality, I will draw on my experiences in Rwanda, in Bosnia, in Poland, in Germany, and in studying these places to make sure that we don't make the same mistakes that we've seen in the past.
All right. Have you planned or thought about actually, hold on. I'm just curious on that. Do you think, have you spent a lot of time, or have you spent any time in like Chicago or St. Louis or Kansas City? Would you say that Omaha is relatively unique in terms of the different groups of people that exist here?
I think in some ways, we're much smaller. I think in some ways we're very similar to Chicago.
Mm-hmm. I know that you mentioned surprising communities here, and I worked over at the casino, and there were like a lot of Sudanese people that worked at the casino. That was surprising to me. I wouldn't have considered that. Now that's over in Council Bluffs, but a lot of those people lived in Omaha too.
Exactly. No, exactly. We have a huge Sudanese community.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in some ways, like our makeup is similar. There are different issues faced. Rivers actually in Kansas City and in St. Louis, rivers play a huge part, and less so here because all of Omaha is on one side of the city, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're on one side of the river. I'm sorry, but yeah, I think we have incredibly diverse communities. You talked about the Sudanese community. We have 20,000 South Sudanese here in Omaha alone,
mm-hmm.
and that's something to celebrate, and also a group that we need to be supporting.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Okay, this next question. Interesting. Have you planned or thought about a worst case pandemic scenario? Let's say the world rolls a 1. Or let's say that the world gets very unlucky. I don't know. Have you ever played D&D?
I understood the reference, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, sorry, yeah, I didn't know. Okay, he said, let's say the world rolls a 1 on a D20 die, on this pandemic saving throw. So we're in the bottom 5% of possible outcomes. I don't know why he spent so much of his question on this.
Wow.
Basically, if we're really unlucky, and there's something like a bad virus mutation, which basically resets all of the vaccine programs back months, and we get with another 6 to 12 months of lockdowns and deaths and economic paralysis. Or it doesn't have to be that dramatic, but if things generally go a worse than expected and next winter is only a little better than this winter, are any plans to muddle through?
Yeah.
So let's say that we rerun it. We get another year-long pandemic, a mutation comes out, we don't get a vaccine for a year. What do you think we've learned this time in terms of handling it that you would implement for your future policy to handle things differently next time?
Absolutely. Number one, we're going to need to do the things that we know work. We're going to need to mandate masks. We're going to need to distance. And if we're going to shut anything down, we have to pay people to be shut down. If I'm telling you as a restaurant owner you can't be open, I need to pay you to be closed.
Mm-hmm.
I need to keep you afloat and not allow so many of these businesses to shut down. I think that we need much better public information, better communication, and we need to rely heavily upon, we have one of the best hospitals in the world in this city. We need to be...
Is that like UNO or Creighton Medical Center?
UNMC.
UNMC. Okay, gotcha.
And we need to be relying heavily upon the advice of experts to make sure that we are communicating and making this work. And then the municipality really has to step up and say, look, no, you're not getting evicted right now. And this is beyond the state level, beyond the federal level. If the feds say nobody gets evicted, great, well, that makes my life easy. But I'm not running for mayor to have my life be made easy. So if the feds don't do what they need to do, I'll do it. And we'll go, look, no, you're not getting evicted. And, we also, in that scenario, if I'm saying nobody gets evicted, have to then look to the landowner, right, to the landlord and say, all right, well, look, you renting or you buying, right? Did you in fact take out a loan to buy this eightplex? And the reason you want to evict people is because you can't pay that off and the bank's about to take it away from you, right? And then we need to help that person. And ultimately, I think we can go to the banks and go, too big to fail. Let's have a conversation about this, right? If we have to eat the rich, we will. But ultimately, you're going to need to help us out here too. And everybody's going to have to get on the same page. And that's what we never did here, right? I think that was the biggest thing with this pandemic is that there was a lot of bad information. Kind of a silly story, and I don't know how many people are listening who know me, but I'll share this. The first girl I ever dated posted on Facebook the other day that, basically like you don't need vaccines and, you just need herd immunity. And I was like, how have we failed you? How have we failed to educate you to the extent that and I didn't pick this fight. These were thoughts in my head, but we need to make sure that people know what's going on and know what's available. And then we need to make sure that we're taking care of everybody. That's what a government is for. There's no reason to have a municipal government if it doesn't take care of the people in the municipality. And so we need to fight like hell to do that. And I think that this past year gives us a blueprint for doing that.
Mm-hmm. She was half right. Herd immunity is important. She just didn't know vaccines. There's not going to be a big M. Shemaiah plot twist where you find out your first girlfriend is your wife or anything, right?
I certainly don't.
Okay.
Shemaiah?
What's his name?
Shyamalan.
I always meme his name because I honestly forget how to pronounce it.
Shyamalan.
We've never talked about this, but something that you brought up that I'm actually really glad you bring up. The eviction issue is actually incredibly complicated because a lot of people think that it's just like evil landlords evicting people.
Right.
But a lot of the loans that are written for especially commercial property, they have to maintain a certain income on it. And if they lower the rents, then the loan from the bank will be changed because the property is seen as less worthwhile. So it's actually better financially for them to evict somebody and have it vacant at the same rent than lowering it. So it's a problem, as you correctly said, you have to work that out with the banks. The
Exactly.
property owners themselves can't do it.
Well, and we can't. There are things we can do as a municipality, right? We can waive some taxes. We can
Sure.
incentivize the bank to lower interest rates, or even hey, look, it's a pandemic. How about you don't charge interest? You're doing okay, right?
Or this is another application for TIF maybe potentially, but
Theoretically, yeah, absolutely.
okay, next question. Hello, I am from Europe, Scotland specifically.
Okay, good. I was like, that's a big continent. Thank you.
Big Scotland. Okay, not even in it. Okay, no.
I have Scottish heritage.
Okay, cool. And I'm interested in what you believe to be the most ambitious thing you plan for Omaha. As I understand it, Nebraska is a nonpartisan state government. It also is a unitary system too, if I recall. And the mayoral seat you are running for is also a nonpartisan position. So I'm interested in knowing or gaining more of an understanding of how you plan about doing the ambitious thing you may want to see happen. Thank you for reading this, and thanks for your time. I think Nebraska is the only unicameral in the whole
It is.
state or in the whole country. Yeah, which is interesting. So this is kind of along with your earlier question, like what's the most ambitious thing you plan to do, and then how do you plan to get it done? Your Obamacare.
So I default first. I need to come out in support of Scottish independence.
Okay, hot take.
That is critical. And it's well past time. Get back on the euro, my friends, or get on the euro, and you'll be a critical part of the European Union. So keep making great whiskey. But in all seriousness, I do think if I got one thing, if I got to hit one home run, knowing I'd strike out every other at bat, we're going to get kids educated. And not forcing them into it, right? You don't have to have it. Not everybody needs a bachelor's degree. Be a plumber, be an electrician, become a chef, become a sommelier, become a hairstylist. These are meaningful careers that enhance our society, improve the lives of others, and will lead to you getting paid more and having more benefits. And so that is, if not A through Z, at least A through M for me.
All right. Issues are important, but so is electability. Winning every vote on this subreddit would only give you 34,000 votes. Moving forward, how do you plan to run against an entrenched, well-funded incumbent? Do you think the restrictions you've placed on your fundraising are going to limit your chance to win/make a difference?
34,000 votes.
We'd win.
Well, they're talking about the general probably, but yeah.
You get me these 34,000 in the primary and it'll send a hell of a message. I was asked in a mayoral forum the other day, and it wasn't a question directed at me, it was directed at all candidates. There are 8 people in this race, 7 of whom are not the lone Republican incumbent. And they said, are you viable? Can you raise enough money to beat Mayor Stothard? And my response was fairly simple. It's 2 parts. Number 1, if you think you're going to outraise the Ricketts political machine, you are delusional. No Democrat will outspend a Republican in this race. Mayor Stothard will outspend me. I will win the primary, and I will spend $1 million on the general, and I will get outspent 2-1. I will win anyway. If you want to talk about electability, the thing that makes a person electable is ideas. There's a reason that we're here right now. There's a reason that there are people in this room who are willing to speak to me. There's a reason why there are 34,000 people on Reddit right now listening. And it's because we've got real ideas. And beyond just ideas, we've got real policies. And I offer promises for the future of Omaha, not as it is, but as it could be. I offer a better future, a more sustainable, safer, prosperous future. And of course, people want that for themselves and for their children. And so, I'm not going to pretend that we've raised every dime that we'd like to. We need more money. I think every campaign does. On that call that night, I said, I cited the most recent thing I'd looked at. I said, in the last 5 days, our average donation was $17. And several of the people who might be branded my opponents chimed in and went, those $17 donations are valuable. They're valuable to us all. And so people who are listening, who believe in our message, who want to support us, who want to see me be mayor and my vision implemented in this city, that's what we need. We need votes, we need volunteers, and we need those donations.
All right. Thank you for your time. Used to work at Creighton. There's a lot of talk of Camara Snipes because she's earned a lot of public progressive endorsements. How does Mark, differentiate himself specifically from Camara? Is it Camara or Camara?
Camara,
sorry.
Camara's her name, yeah. And I'd like to begin this by sharing something I posted on Twitter, assuming that not all 34,000 of you follow me on Twitter, although you should, at Mark Gudgel. And I posted this to Twitter. So the other night in that same mayoral forum I was talking about, I spoke, I did my introductory piece, and my phone vibrated. And I never have my phone on in those things because I don't want to be distracted. I want to be paying attention and try to be as sharp as I'm able. My phone vibrated, so I grabbed it and I looked. And it was Kimra messaging me, and she said, "You're really hard to hear. There's something wrong with your mic." She didn't have to do that. She could have absolutely let me just be hard to hear. But she made an effort, and I appreciated that. And I want to say I appreciate her. Kimra Harris, pardon me, terribly sorry. Kimra Snipes, Jasmine Harris, Dewan Hayes. These are good people. These are good people who have real reasons for running. And I don't think it's a very different world in which instead of running, I'm supporting one of them. But the truth is, when I think about the future of this city, I propose a vision that is far-ranging and all-encompassing. I am, in my own opinion, the candidate speaking most compellingly about fighting climate change. I'm the only candidate that I have heard speak about free college tuition. The plans that we've put forward to move the election, I haven't heard anybody else speak on that point. The plans that we've put forward to increase voter turnout, to support legalization of marijuana, and to support the LGBTQ plus community, and to support refugees and immigrants. So many of the policies that I have helped to write for my campaign, the big ideas that have been turned into real concrete policies that are available on our webpage, I don't see these coming from other camps. If they were, there'd be a different conversation to have. But at the end of the day, I genuinely believe, as everybody who's running should, that I am the best candidate and the best option.
What do you think about working on bringing large corporate partnerships like the Dom 1 facility, Amazon Shipping, opinions on local tax breaks that lead to increased employment?
I am, we lost Conagra, we lost TD Ameritrade, we lost their jobs, we lost their tax revenue. This is a huge hit to the city. Meanwhile, Amazon built a $200 million fulfillment center in Papillion. And Stephen, you and I were having dinner one night and talking about that, and it was you who pointed out the only reason that Papillion can do that is because of their proximity to Omaha. Amazon wasn't going to build there in Papillion if Omaha wasn't here. They aren't going to build that in Grand Island. And we need people to stop reaping the benefits of Omaha without living in Omaha. Omaha needs that. We need our firefighters paid. We need our public schools funded. We need our roads paved. And so we need people in Omaha, and that includes businesses. Ultimately, I think a lot of the issue boils down to communication and to better public information. Let's say that Tesla, I love Teslas. I think they're really cool. Let's say that Tesla, Elon Musk, comes to us and says, I would like to start building Teslas in Omaha. I just don't want to pay any taxes. It's not a hard yes or a hard no. It becomes a matter of cost-benefit analysis. We have to dig into what does this do for how many people are you going to employ? And how much taxes will they pay? Will they go out to eat? What can we do in terms of making sure everybody in Omaha can have a Tesla? Are you going to build chargers? Is part of your coming into the city committing to X $1 million worth of road maintenance, and so on and so forth? And I think first you have those negotiations, you do the tax benefit analysis, you go, is this good for the city? And if the answer is yes, then you agree to it. If it's good for the city, you say, yes, we're doing this. And then you make sure that people know, hey, this is why this is good for the city of Omaha. And I think if people have the information, they don't struggle to make the right decisions. The problem is we so frequently lack government transparency.
I'm going to ask you a really hard question. Ready?
Okay.
How do you differentiate your stance there between like maybe we should offer big tax incentives for people to bring things out of state? How do you reconcile that with your positions on like the TIF loans that basically go out at the crossroads area?
Sure. To me, and this was part of a conversation today, in fact, kind of a heated conversation from parts of it. To me, it's about corruption and avoiding it. I'll give you a great example that I learned about in that meeting today. TD Ameritrade, as they were finishing that massive, and if people don't know Omaha, there's a massive, like 15-story LEED certified TD Ameritrade building in the middle of nowhere. It's right off Dodge. It's in the city, but what it is not is in the urban core. It was built clear out west. That's a huge problem, if I can be tangential for a moment, because it greenlights people living in Gretna and working at TDA. And if you live in Gretna, you don't pay our firefighters and you don't pave our roads. Your taxes pay Gretna's. And so we don't want you living in Gretna. Nothing against Gretna, but they need to pay for their own stuff, and we need our people paying for ours. And so, we've got this monstrosity of a building, which, by the way, now is empty because TD Ameritrade has moved to Texas. And I learned today that they got, near the end of the project, $5 million in tax increment financing. Now, you might think to yourself, well, $5 million, that's not very much. But if you think about where $5 million could be used and what it could do to improve the lives of people who own houses that are worth $50,000, all of a sudden I think you're about as angry as I am. And so I absolutely want to incentivize, possibly even using TIF, companies relocating to Omaha who are going to employ our people and make their lives better, who are going to chip into the Omaha Promise and help them get educated and pave our roads and do all the other things that big companies do. I don't want to see TIF used on vanity projects, on prime real estate, 72nd and Dodge, building luxury condos that we don't need. We need middle and mixed and low-income housing. We do not need more luxury condos.
This question is kind of in a similar vein. What are your thoughts about taxpayers footing the bill to renovate the privately owned Blackstone Hotel?
I find it problematic. I said in the meeting today, actually, as we were talking about that I didn't realize I'd ever agreed with Amy Melton on anything, and apparently maybe there's some common ground to be found there. Amy Melton is currently it's not Congress, City Councilwoman from District 7. And apparently she opposed that too. I think that the gentrification of Blackstone, and I know some people object to that term, but I'm not one of them. The gentrification of the Blackstone district has done some great things. It's a pretty neat space at this point, and it's a positive to the city. But it can't be done at the expense of the residents. You can't be forcing people out of it, right? And so, and you certainly shouldn't be doing that with taxpayer money. There's a grotesque irony to the idea that there were people living in the Blackstone district who were paying taxes, and that taxpayer money actually gentrified the neighborhood to the point that they had to leave it. And so of course I find those things problematic, and I think as mayor, there are going to be solutions that are well within reach.
All right, and then this guy wants to know, how do you plan to tackle the high crime rate in the city? Does Omaha have high crime comparable to other Midwestern cities?
It really depends on where you're at and what you consider high, but certainly there are, certainly we have violence, and certainly we have a crime rate that could be lower, and could be addressed. One of the things I think we have to understand, number one, when we talk about the pandemic, I talk about relying on the opinions of experts, right, and on data. The current administration talks about hiring more police officers to fix that problem. No research would suggest that will work. More police are not better police. More police do not equal a lower crime rate. We already have more police officers than any comparable municipality, other than maybe like Huntington Beach or Long Beach, I think it is. There are a couple that have really high crime rates and really large numbers of police, but most comparable municipalities have hundreds fewer police than we do. And I think that if our police are better supplied, better supported, if less is asked of them, one of the things that I really want to do is tell the police, don't worry about weed. It doesn't matter. So you don't have to go, I liken it to the dress code as a teacher. I don't want to pick a fight with you about what you're wearing, right? You're not supposed to have your hood up. But if that's how I'm going to greet you on your way into my classroom because you forgot to take it down, I have now created an adversarial relationship, and repairing that is hard. Why should our police have to worry about the fact that what you're smoking might not be a cigarette, right? It's kind of ridiculous. So let's make their lives a little bit easier. And let's give them the equipment and the training that they need to be better at their jobs. Let's do their jobs a little bit different. Let's work on community policing. Maybe even, some of the traditional stuff, walking a beat versus just driving around in this intimidating vehicle, I think that there's a lot that can be done to build relationships with the community. But the other thing is, if we're talking about crime rate, you have to address the root problems of crime. Crime is not amusement for 99% of the people who commit it. Crime is the product of need. And if we can take away those needs, if we can improve the lives of the people, if we can offer such good public transportation that you don't have to own a car, and now your minimum wage paycheck, which is way too little money, is not getting gobbled up by a car payment and insurance and oil and gasoline, and can go to where you live, and suddenly you're able to reintroduce meat to the family's diet, and your kids can wear the clothes that they want to wear to school, you're going to be far less inclined to commit crime. And so if we can address the root causes of crime and take away the needs by meeting the needs of the residents of our community, I think that is unto itself the best way to address our issues with crime.
All right, and then there was one more. There was a newer question that came in. As an African American, vaccine hesitancy is a very big issue in our community. How would you find ways to encourage people, particularly minorities, I would guess in this case, particularly African Americans, to get the COVID vaccine? Or I guess more broadly speaking, I haven't specifically asked you, how do you feel about the coronavirus vaccine? Do you feel like it's a positive thing? And then how would you alleviate, I guess, minority fears in terms of getting that vaccine?
Sure, what a great question. For starters, I view public information as an important part of the job, and government transparency is an important part of the job. So we're going to need to make sure that people understand that the vaccine is available, that it's free, that it's safe, and where they can get it, because we need them to get it. And that certainly applies to people who may be hesitant because of their background. Our campaign's webpage is available in 7 languages. When I'm mayor, the cities will be as well, and probably far more. And we're going to want to make sure that everybody understands, through our public information campaigns, that the coronavirus vaccine is safe. Now, in the case of African Americans, it's not a language barrier. But I think that we'll need to spend time in the communities, and that it can't be a heavy-handed push, right? That people need to come to terms with this themselves. I understand why it's a little scary. This whole disease has been a little scary, and it has taken a disproportionate toll on our Black brothers and sisters. And that is something, that they are more acutely aware of than I am. And I think that we need to offer the solution, make it available, and allow them to have the time that they need to decide that this is what we're going to do.
Okay. I think that's the final question.
Okay.
Do you have any final thoughts or concerns or?
Yeah, I do. Just a couple. Sure. One of the things that I want everybody who's interested in the Omaha mayoral election to understand is that this is just not about me. If it hadn't been so recent, I would have stolen the campaign slogan, "Not me, us," because it so truly embodies what I'm doing. I'm running for mayor because I was asked to run for mayor. I'm running for mayor because Omaha needs a new better mayor because we lack leadership and because our leadership vacuum has become deadly. I'm happy as a father and a husband and an English teacher, but I also possess the skills necessary to run this city and to run it far better than it has been run, and to lead us into the 21st century and to secure a better future for our children. I'm not doing this for me. I was not sitting around trying to figure out what office to run for. I'm doing this for everybody who's listening. I'm doing this for my children and for theirs. And I'm grateful to those who are invested in this process. I'm grateful to people who take the time to listen to things like this, who get on a stream and pay attention to what's going on and actually care enough to ask questions and be involved. So thank you. And, the last thing I'll add is that this is ultimately a battle about name recognition. And I have an incredible staff of now more than 30 people, 95+% of whom are volunteers, who are working incredibly hard day and night to make sure that my name is known and that my box is the one that gets checked on the ballot on April 6th. And if you're listening and you believe in the things I'm saying and you believe in my vision for the city, I need two things from you. Number one, I need you to make sure that you are registered to vote, if in fact you can be. If you can't be, please reach out to your friends in Omaha. But if you are from Omaha, please be sure you're registered and make a plan to vote on April 6th, because I assure you this election is going to come down to the narrowest of margins. There are 8 of us in this race, and only the top 2 vote getters are going to go on to the general. I need to be one of them. If you believe in my vision, I have to be one of them.
And even better, I think you can mail by ballot for the mayor primaries, right?
Yes.
Yeah, vote by ballot. Don't or do it by mail. Don't wait for the day. Don't make excuses, guys. Come on.
Yeah, no, you're so right. It could be a blizzard on April the 6th, but if you already mailed your ballot in, it just doesn't matter. You're absolutely right about that. And if you want that information, go to gudgelformayor.com, and you can there's information there about requesting a ballot and voting and so forth. And again, it's available in 7 languages, so tell your friends. But the second thing is that name recognition is so largely about money. And I mentioned the other day our average donation being like $17 over a 5-day period. And since then we've taken in some pretty big donations, which is great. But the reality is I have never accepted a donation larger than $1,000. This is a truly grassroots campaign, and you are needed. So if you are able to contribute, please go to gudgelformayor.com, and there's a donate button. Anything that you can provide, I assure you we will steward as well as possible. I went out in my neighborhood today and I dropped off 10 yard signs to people who had asked me for them, and it was a lot of fun to do. That's $25. If you've got $25, it'll buy 10 more yard signs. And, those sorts of things make a heck of a difference. So I would be grateful for your support. Thank you for taking the time tonight. Stephen, I definitely have to say thank you. It's truly always a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's been fun. You got an incredibly important endorsement in chat. I don't know anything about any of the other candidates, but I like most of what he represents and wants to do with Omaha. Good night, heart. That was Mary Bunnell, my mom. So
Excellent.
nice job.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Mary.
All right. Well, hey, thanks a lot, guys. Check out his site. All the donations help, obviously. We're not going to win on money alone, but any money helps, obviously, for getting the message out as much as possible. I'm sure we'll have probably some other thing with Mark in the future, but thanks a lot for concluding this AMA here. Mark, I very much appreciate it. It's been fun. And
Thank you.
we'll see you guys later. Peace out.
Remember to hit that like and subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell so that my videos show up right in your feed.